Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Neural Networking with Ketan. Today we have with us a globally recognized technology thought leader and entrepreneur with a rich background in driving innovation and digital transformation, Mr. Haja Deen. Passionate about creating new capabilities, mentoring, and enhancing human experiences through cutting edge technology, Haja excels in building high performance technology teams, acting as a catalyst for organizational change and leveraging his global experience across cultures. His career spans leading global companies from the UK, Singapore, and Japan, including NTT, Saint-Gobain, and Pladis Global. Haja's leadership has been pivotal in transforming multi-billion-dollar corporates through digital initiatives. Rarely, he is also the co-founder of two groundbreaking tech startups. Haja launched a visionary food ordering app that gained 20,000 users within 24 hours and developed an award-winning property technology business that digitized and democratized property investments. He is also the author of Build the Right Thing: How to Build High Growth Agile Digital Businesses Customers Love, a comprehensive guide for successful digital transformation and ventures. Leveraging his global corporate tech startup and cross-cultural experiences, Haja's current focus is consulting with leadership teams to develop and execute their AI strategy. This episode dives into the world of generative AI with Haja, where we will explore how to develop a successful GenAI strategy that's effective and efficient even with limited resources. Join us as Haja shares his insights on building a successful lean GenAI strategy.
Thank you for having me on your podcast. I think it's a wonderful idea to share knowledge about what you're doing in the AI space, which obviously is currently going through a huge growth.
So let's deep dive into the questions straight away. So Haja, the first question is, your career path is fascinating with experiences across software engineering, leadership roles, and even a stint in .com startup. But my question to you is, what initially brought your focus on digital and data transformation throughout your career?
A number of coincidences, I would say, how I got started in digital transformation. As I was doing my university in Singapore, the National University of Singapore had introduced internet. This was 1994, I think. So this was the first time internet was being introduced. It was only within the campus, not available outside of the campus. And we got to experience it in the computer lab. There wasn't much of a browsing then. You were able to browse the web. And the big application at that time was actually chat. So some sort of not the chat that it looks like today, but it's very different. So this was around 95. An undergraduate who is kind of looking at various things, thinking about the future, this really struck me. This internet was going to be a game changer. It's going to change the whole world. I could kind of sense it. Although I didn't know at that time how the world would change, I knew that it was a game changer. Today, in 2024, as we record this podcast, it feels like that whole thing is happening again with AI. We know that AI is now in the open. Everybody is using ChatGPT, and there's a lot of buzz around AI. But actually, people do not know how the future will change as a result. So it is kind of parallel. Almost 30 years ago, when I was sitting in the computer lab at the university, when you're at the cusp of a transformational technology. So that's the kind of parallel between where I was 30 years ago and what's happening with AI today. Obviously, in between this space, I'm extremely fortunate in the sense that I got to work with some amazing technologies helping to transform businesses. Now, again, it was a series of coincidences how I arrived at that. I started as a software engineer, building basically simple websites or transactional websites. It was a language called Cold Fusion then, but the market was just growing exponentially. There was huge demand for those kind of services. And I got to work with some amazing companies. The first one was actually a food delivery startup in Singapore. And they had invented what would today be something like Deliveroo, or in India would be Zomato or something like that. So we had actually invented that in 1999 for KFC and Pizza Hut in Singapore, allowing people to order on the website.
So which year was this?
This
Because
was
this would have been.
1999.
Oh my goodness, that was like pretty ahead of time in
That's right.
1999, I can
It was
imagine.
way ahead of time. It was just way ahead of time. But that was the beginning of the first dot-com bubble, actually. And how you know that you have created something valuable is when there is adoption. When users actually use it and keep coming back, you know that you have created something valuable. So when we launched fast foods, basically it was simple. So people could order pizza on a website in 1999. So this is just way ahead of its time. But surprisingly, when we actually launched it, on within 3 days we had something like 50,000 registered users.
Wow.
Now this is amazing because even the internet penetration was very low at that time. People were still on dial-up modems. But because we launched it and there was a bit of marketing around it, we had 50,000 users within few days, and the servers couldn't take the load. It just kept crashing, right? So that just was amazing for us, and we knew that we had kind of created something valuable, and that led to other opportunities to do similar things around digital transformation, setting up transactional digitizing, basically digitizing current processes or ordering or e-commerce for multinational companies in and around Singapore, right? And similar kind of trajectory after I came to the UK 14 years ago to help companies transform their digital operations to really scale it up using digital. So the theme has been really the first year what I did with fast foods. That has been really the theme of helping organizations leverage technology to digitize. Now, I'm really fortunate in the sense that, for the last 28 years, I've been able to work in that space around the world and help organizations leverage that technology. So that's, a long answer to your question. That's how I got into kind of leveraging technology for digital transformation and helping organizations.
Yeah, I think that has been a great journey. So, just to give the viewers a perspective on the data points that you said, I was just 6 years old in 1994 and 11 years old in 1999. Just want to put that perspective, with that old and amazing and fascinating your journey has been through. We can see the passion that you talked about. Helping organizations leverage the technology for solving business problems, and I think that has reflected in the book that you have written. So that is an amazing read. So it is titled Build the Right Thing: How to Build High Growth Agile Digital Businesses Customers Love, which we could see from your experience that you talked about the food delivery thing where 50,000 users just shot up in that small period of time. So in the book, you emphasize building a customer centric strategy and the importance of choosing the right technology. Now, with a variety of GenAI tools, which that are available in the market, what guidance can you offer to companies for selecting a scalable and future-proof tech stack?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And by the way, I wasn't much older than you when I did that app. I was in my early 20s. And that's the power of technology, I would say, especially new technology. When such disruptive things happen, a lot of opportunities open up for young people, and including myself. I was a beneficiary of that, and people like yourself now leveraging AI and Gen AI. It's a kind of similar journey because the technology is new, but it's valuable, and it is good. It is transformative. So, but there is a huge supply of talent to do that work. As a result, new people get trained, and overall economy expands actually. So we are seeing a similar kind of journey with GenAI. Now, coming back to your question, when we did the app for food ordering, we actually did two apps. One app, the first app we did was um, basically a PC based, you go to your web browser and you order pizzas and it gets delivered to you. Now, because that was so successful, that's the one which got 50,000 users. We actually did another app, and that app was actually a mobile phone based app, which allowed you to do the same thing. Now, this is 1999 or early 2000. There were only two internet-enabled phones then. So one was a Nokia phone and the other one was an Ericsson phone. No, we actually patented this technology. We were one of the first companies to build an app for transactions, and we developed that, and it actually worked. You could actually, one of my partners in that venture was sat in a beach in Singapore, and he ordered a pizza, and the pizza arrived. So this was probably the world's first mobile-based app delivery, like 25 years ago. But that had no users. It had almost zero users. He was the only one who ordered. The reason was simple. Nobody had smartphones at that time. iPhone wasn't even in existence at that time. And it was just too difficult to order that. Right? And this was a kind of a big eye-opener for us. On one side, we had a huge success. It was the same process to order pizzas, but on a PC. But on a phone, it was a similar process, but we thought that it's actually more convenient. You could do it anywhere. And this is true in today's world. Everything is done on the phone, right? But smartphone is ubiquitous now. So we learned a lot from that. And we realized it is really not about the technology. Now, at that time, we didn't know this because there was no framework or no method to understand this. But through our experience and learning from both our success and our failure, we realized that actually the whole thing hinges on the users and the user's journey, right? So this is what led me to write that book called Build the Right Thing, because a lot of waste I saw in both the corporations as well as in startups happened because the people who are coming up with a digital solution did not take time to understand the journey of the users they were building for. It's not even the users. The user is a persona. It's a type of person, right? But each persona undertakes a journey from beginning to end, whether it is ordering of food online or doing an application for a passport online or doing banking online. That is a journey, right? This was my big learning through my career. If we are catering for the journey and digitizing it with AI, GenAI, or whatever the technology of the day is, if we are catering for that journey, the chances of success is just significantly higher. If we are not catering for the journey, the chances of failure is just almost guaranteed. Yeah. So that's the starting point, Ketan, for building out any kind of a AI strategy or a Gen AI strategy, to really understand your user base, what is it you're creating for, and to use technology at the right points in that user's journey to create a delightful journey. And if you can do that, your product will work and users will engage with it, give you feedback, and then you can create a positive upward momentum with that product. So, as we are at this Gen AI kind of cusp where it is really starting to scale, we have to take steps backwards to understand, if you are a software developer creating something for a user, really understanding the user's journey, and where is it in the user's journey you're going to leverage Gen AI or AI to create a significantly better, more delightful journey for the user. You have to start with this perspective, in my view, and that will significantly increase the odds of success. Now, if you're a corporation trying to create the your GenAI strategy, the principle is similar but a little bit more complex. Like you need to really understand your value chain and then the user journey within that value chain. Hopefully, that starts to make sense. This is my advice to any. This is as I'm working with leadership teams now and C-level. My advice is really start with your value proposition. What is the value that flows through your organization, and what is the user interaction that are at the touch points of where value is created. And if you use AI in those touch points, your return on investment is just going to be significantly higher. Your chance of success is going to be higher. Your team is going to be a lot more fulfilled because they are able to create positive upward momentum with whatever projects they're working on. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yes, I mean, this was very valuable. We can see the practitioner in you speaking about the value prop as well as the user journey, and we have seen that many of the times enterprises or corporations they can see the value prop, but the user journey part is somewhere missing sometimes because it is measured after the implementation is done in some of the areas. But I think like you said, if we take a look at that part early enough in the journey, then that kind of helps from that perspective of implementation as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we were lucky in the sense that the kind of your first job, I think, is very important. Like I was kind of lucky, and by coincidence, I ended up in a role, creating a digital product way ahead of its time, and working with really interesting people. And that forms your thinking really as a startup. You have very limited time to make a success out of the product. Now, so you're really focused on what will drive value, and you're really listening to the users to get feedback and constantly improving that product. Now, this is commonly, understood now in DevOps processes and product management. All those concepts, frameworks exist. But 25 years ago they didn't. Now, similar with AI now. There isn't a big framework to say this is what you need to do. We are all learning, both both the consultants as well as the business leaders as well as the implementers are all learning how do you really come up with something that works. And the idea is to have a directionally right strategy, a strategy which will generate value for your business over time, and then start with small experiments, do it, learn, and then scale up the ones which are successful for your business, and then scale down the ones which don't really start to work. So, Ketan, this idea of the value chain and user journey is kind of universal. What we learned over time, what I learned over time is this is what I've really emphasized in my book. It's easier to bring it out using an example. Let's consider three different businesses. Okay, a business which makes cookies, and it is doing $1,000 in revenue per year. Okay, it's making cookies, selling them, it's making $1,000. I'm sure there are many of these businesses around the world. You take the same business which is making cookies, but it's now operating at a much bigger scale. It's doing a $1 billion in revenue in one country per year. Okay, so same product, but bigger business operating in one country. The third business is also making cookies, but it's doing $10 billion in revenues every year, and it's selling around the globe. Now, the value chain within those three different businesses is actually very, very, very similar, right? You've got to make good cookies. You've got to bring it to the consumer. you got to sell it at the right price point. Right? And then you have a perpetual business. Now, if you didn't make good cookies, or if you sold it at the wrong price and you can't bring it to the market, your business starts to fault, right? So basics. Now, that principle is the same for the $1,000 business, the $1 billion business, and the $10 billion business. No different. This is your value chain, basically. So when people or leaders or consultants talk about value chain, it sounds like complex, but it's not. When you peel back the business, where do we generate value? Where does the business generate value? You need to really understand this. Most people don't look into this or understand this, whatever reason, because their role is not involved in this, etc. And then they start to do a project, an AI project or Gen AI project, and then they complain that they are not getting return on investment, the project has failed, or we have hit some major obstacles, etc. Now, if you really understood where value is generated in the business, then you can start to apply the AI at the right place. Let's go back to that cookie example because it's easy to understand. Now, you need to do three things basically, right? You need to make great cookies. You need to get it to the market, have distribution, and you need to be able to market it. You need to be able to promote it, right? So those are your three big value levers in making and selling cookies. So you would start to apply AI or Gen AI where value is generated. Okay. Let's take marketing, for example. Now, if you now are making cookies, great cookies, you got a pricing right. Now you need to market. Now, you want to really boost your marketing. Think about then what does ideal marketing looks like, and then where does AI or Gen AI sits in. Don't even think about the solution first. The solution is the AI or Gen AI. What is your ideal marketing? What is the problem you're trying to solve with marketing? And then you can think about, okay, where is the role for Gen AI or AI? Most people tend to do it the other way around. Most people tend to say, Gen AI can create images. Okay, I'm creating some marketing images. Can I use Gen AI to create more marketing images to kind of flood the market and see what happens? It doesn't. You get some learning, which is good, but ultimately you may not generate value. I think there was a tweet by one of the CMOs recently saying that he had now used Gen AI to generate a lot of marketing. As a result, he was doing it with half the team size. Now, on one side, he had a lot of positives, and on the other side, that provoked a lot of reaction. What happened to the other half of the team, and so on, right? So you need a more comprehensive process. How do you really scale it up? How can you leverage the existing people to do more and amplify marketing? I'm using marketing as an example. So work backward from the result you want and then fit in the right AI or Gen AI tools to deliver that result. The learning would be significantly better. The result would be significantly better. And even if in the early days you're not getting to the ROI or financial returns, you would have built a solid understanding of what needs to be done. As the technologies evolve, you can start to apply more of it.
I think this cookie example that you gave, along with the marketing specific journey, I think this was a great example of how the companies should approach data transformation and create business value out of that transformation. I think you gave a great analogy of how you should think in that marketing example of that CMO tweet saying that we are generating lot many images. You get a great learning out of that versus how do you tie that to the business value the process is generating. Do you think there are can you elaborate do you think there are any couple of more examples that you give on that front?
uh, any business has a value chain, Ketan. So if you're an automotive manufacturer, if you're a car manufacturer, right, you got a value chain. You got to produce a certain type of a car, electric vehicles in current context, and you needed to do it better, faster, and cheaper than your competition. That's your value chain, basically. Right? And I had the good fortune because of my consulting work to work across industries in car manufacturing, automotive, in telecoms, in manufacturing, food manufacturing, retail, wide variety of industries. We have been able to deliver solutions to, and I always try to understand it because each one was new. I try to understand, okay, what is actually happening here in very simple terms. Like if it is car manufacturing, you can understand that value chain from all the way from raw materials to design to manufacturing, testing, and all the compliance stuff. Right? Cookies are different, similar, but product is different. Telecom is a completely different value chain. That's asset based. Your networks, your lines into the houses, and etc. So, in simple terms, whatever team is trying to put an AI strategy or GenAI strategy together, they really need to just sit down with some pen and paper to really understand what is the value chain here. Where do we start, where do we finish, and what are the important areas. Certain businesses have certain unique advantages. For example, let's go back to that cookie example. Some businesses would be able to produce certain cookies which taste just right for the consumer, is healthy, or it's at the right price point for that market, etc. And they have a unique advantage in doing that. Right? It is important that team which is working on the strategy identifies this. The role of technology then is to amplify that advantage. So with AI or Gen AI or digital, the role of technology is to amplify that advantage. Companies who do this right, they find they get a lot of value from technology. Going back to your question, understanding the value chain, if you think about it in very simple, basic terms and explain it to yourself, like a 10-year-old will understand, it's easy to see the value. If you hide it, when most consultants make that mistake, and hide it with jargon and complexity, it's very difficult to see where value is generated in a business.
Very true. Very true. Yes. Thank you for highlighting these important aspects. Now, coming to this part of spending, because if you have to build something, then there is a capital allocation that you need to do as part of any application that you are going to build. So there is a statistics that says GenAI spending by enterprises will touch 200 billion by 2030. This has been a McKinsey study that we are quoting here. So how can companies develop a GenAI strategy that is both effective and lean?
It's a good question, and kind of my thought process or work for a long period of time. McKinsey is right in the sense that GenAI spending by corporations as well as small and medium businesses will increase. That's assumed. I think it's going to happen. Value generated, exactly how much will be generated, we do not know, but I think economic value generated from implementing AI in businesses will also increase. So both the spending in AI as well as the value generated will increase. So this is a given, and we are not refuting that. Exactly how much we do not know. We'll find out over time, and it actually doesn't. I think it's not a very important point for us to think about. How each business generates value is going to be quite unique to that business. We saw this in digital transformation in the last kind of 25 years, right? So a lot of retailers, those who dramatically adopted their business models have survived. A lot of other retailers who didn't adopt are not there today. We see a dramatic change. Even in media, for example, we are seeing dramatic changes today compared to, say, just 10, 15 years ago. You take banking, for example. Some of you, maybe you may not remember, but some of us a little bit older would remember. When PCs came about, the banks were probably the first to introduce PCs, but not to consumers. So they were actually, the bank tellers would have PCs. So you still needed to go physically to the bank branch, queue up, and then when you get to the counter, they are using a PC, and then instead of you doing the ledger on paper, the PC was doing it. So that kind of evolutionary transformation will happen with AI. So what businesses are already doing today, they will leverage AI to repeat that process in a better, more efficient, more productive way. Right. So that's that bank teller example. So bank teller is still there, but he or she is using a PC now. Then fast forward a little bit time, people realize actually with this PC technology, we can make ATM machines. Yes. Right. So the ATM machine came about using the same underlying technology, which is a PC sitting inside an ATM machine, controlling the machine. And now you don't have the bank teller. Consumer is directly able to engage with that PC, which is hidden inside that ATM machine, now able to do transaction. Now, today we don't think about it when we go to ATM, but that's the transformation. So you've got the incremental transformation with the teller and the PC, and you got the disruptive transformation with the ATM machine. Now, with AI, it's going to be the same. It's going to be a mixture of both. You will have the bank teller using that PC example. So you would have existing people with businesses leveraging AI and GenAI, and you would have transformational changes enabled by this new technology. Now, at the heart of it, we need to understand what AI is. What AI is at the heart of it, especially generative AI, is it's a prediction machine. It is predicting. As it's writing these paragraphs or as it is creating the image, it is predicting the next word, it is predicting the next picture based on all the training data it has had. Right? And very soon we will be in the era which is where it is also able to crunch a lot of numbers, which generative AI is not doing today, but a combination of AI and generative AI would be able to do that data analytics part very, very soon. Right? It will be able to make sense of tons of data, huge amount of data which humans cannot even think about processing. When that happens, that prediction ability will increase significantly. And when that prediction ability increases significantly, we are talking about months and years, we are not talking about decades from this happening, then it will have huge impact on business models. Let me give you an example. Today, we go to Amazon or Flipkart in India and we will buy some products. And we are repeating this pattern for the last many years. Right? And both Amazon, Flipkart, or in Baidu, or in Alibaba in China, they have all this data. Right? They would be able to easily predict with that data. They will be able to train the models. What are we going to buy next? Right? So, do we really need to go and shop, or they just send us the products and then we keep those we need and we return those we don't want? So the whole model has changed now. Right? So we will see disruption like this. Ultimately, AI will emerge as a far better predictor than human beings ever were. And as a result, it will have massive impact on businesses. That is really the economic gist of what AI is.
Right, right. That e-commerce example is something I think everyone will be able to connect to that which you gave. So that was one of the use case also that you talked about. So now bringing the attention to what happens in enterprises, I'm sure you must have experienced this, is that at the beginning when you talk about all these things, you probably get a list of use cases saying that, hey guys, here are the 40 use cases that we have come up after understanding our users and the value chain. Now, how should companies go about selecting the right ones and typically targeting the right ones with a lean GenAI strategy in mind?
It's a great question. Right, those three things I mentioned needs to come together. Okay, is it along the value chain? Is it going to add value? Is it going to be right for the users? And then do we have the ability to execute it? Now, once you're past that, then you come into, let's say you've taken 40 ideas down to 4 ideas. Out of the 4, my personal belief and what I've seen led to success is you always prioritize the one which will create the greatest momentum. A lot of people tend to miss this. Then they think, okay, we're going to generate value, we're going to see users are going to be happy with this because we have built a prototype and tested it, and we are also confident that we have the ability to execute this. The bit which then gets missed is, can we execute quickly? Can we get momentum on it? Because whatever products, ideas you create, you have to sharpen it in the market, not in your mind. A lot of teams make this mistake. They sharpen the product in their minds and bigger presentations, bigger PowerPoints, etc., etc. Nothing happens. There's no momentum. There's no momentum created. The market is the users. If you got to 10 users, that's brilliant. They're going to give you feedback. You got to 20, it's even better, right? You got to 200, it's fantastic, right? So you sharpen your product in the market, not in your minds, right? So momentum is key to sharpen that product. And there is a unintended byproduct of it, which is happiness. The team feels happy, they feel fulfilled because they're seeing progress, they're getting feedback, they're talking to people, right? A common mistake I see, especially tech people make, is they're sitting there writing code and more and more code and becoming more and more complex, but the product is not hitting the market, it's not being refined. But as soon as you even take a very small prototype, bring it to the market, and there you're talking to people and getting feedback, it's a very different experience. That team is energized, they are listening, they come back, you don't need to tell them to refine the product, they are refining the product. Yes. It's momentum, right? So my biggest advice is if you have 4 ideas out of 40, pick the one where you can get the best momentum.
Momentum, yes, that's a very key point.
The other side, and the other side of momentum is, let's say you are in a corporate organization, it unlocks a good positive PR for you internally. C-level starts to notice it, it unlocks budgets, right? So a 2 weeks project is always better than a 2 months project, and a 2 months project is always better than a 2-year project, right? No chance of, in AI speed, 2-year project will never succeed. So do something within few weeks, bring a prototype to life, and then validate it in the market. Don't worry whether it will fail or succeed. Don't worry on the outcome, focus on the activity. Then your C-level will notice if you're in a big organization. If you're in a startup, your consumers will notice and you will get momentum either way.
Yes, I think the momentum point you made hits the chord there directly when you are starting that journey and identifying the initial use cases from a execution point of view. So we have seen in enterprises what happens is that every time there is a technology implementation based on use cases, there is another view that how do you do capital allocation with respect to understanding the technology and the use cases and the initiative for a long term transformational impact? So having said this, what's your view on current maturity of GenAI as a technology in combination with the eye for what you say capital allocation from a long term effect?
The technology, Ketan, will keep on evolving. So it is probably not useful for us to think about it whether it's matured or not. Like it's not binary, like mature, not mature. It's evolving. Also, do you wait until it is matured and you start to implement it? Uh, Probably not. The way I would allocate capital or I would ask for capital if you ask me for budgets is you think about the small experiments you can do very, very low cost. And that is your decision point. At the end of 2 weeks, if you can't build something valuable for the user or the business, then it is not worth investing more. Right. The 2 week sprint cycle is very useful in the sense that it forces you to think how can you do it quickly. It also then forces you to think what is the right technology to use. Yeah. Rather than you building everything or the components you can bring in to deliver value. Then it is a kind of stage gate approach. If you hit that and you can demonstrate value, you come back and you allocate more capital to it, etc. This reduces the risk of allocating too much capital to a kind of a fancy project, which then after a few months you realize it's not going to deliver value, but then your money is already spent. That is a common mistake we see with this kind of early technology projects. So you really need to be thinking in a very lean way. One of the questions I used to ask, and maybe I wasn't very popular as a result of that, is in a corporate organization, let's say, like if this was your project and if you're putting your money down, what would you do? Like it's a very different way of thinking about it than say I'm asking my CEO for 2-3 million to implement this AI. So if you brought that lean thinking to it, chances of success is much higher, and your journey will be a lot more happier, I would think.
Yes, yes. So the one point that takeaway here is that having that incremental approach in mind, which you said that you keep on building and keep that cycle and keep measuring the success. And another thing that you mentioned is, would you put? So you should think from that hat that would you put the money if you have to put the money in. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a founder's mindset. But
Yes,
as you guys are entrepreneurs, you have founded Converge, you know that thinking, but it may not come naturally to a lot of people, and that's fine. It is important to think from that aspect point of view, because at the end of the day, ROI is your returns divided by your cost, right? So your denominator, if you can keep it low, you naturally increase your ROI.
Yeah, I just love the way that you put the things in simple but very effective and basic and very efficient manner. So very thankful for that. So we have also observing many organizations, they struggle to manage costs in their GenAI projects. So these are mostly the cost of LLMs. Sometimes they are cost of queries. How should companies go about choosing maybe affordable LLMs, or what are the trade-offs in such scenarios compared to pricey LLM options?
My personal belief is current LLMs are already very cost effective. Now, whether it's your GPT APIs or your other open source APIs, either you build it yourself and pay for the compute, or you're paying somebody like OpenAI or Microsoft or Google to run that LLM for you, and you're just paying for the service. Either way, it is looking quite cost effective now, because we're still very much in experimental mode. We know the denominator, we don't know the numerator, right? We don't know the ROI. We only know the cost at this stage. ROI could be, numerator could be huge. So the mindset now is to, if you focus too much on the cost, you won't make any progress. So do some lean experiments, and you know this better than me. Keep the data to a subset. Don't do it on all the data. Keep it to a subset, and then proof value. And then if it works, then scale it. There are things like that you can do to manage the cost, and it is important. And the technology now, whether you buy it from any of the cloud providers, you can control the cost. You won't be able to exceed it. You can set caps and things like that. So that way you can control the cost. And my personal belief is that over time, the LLM usage cost themselves will increase relative to their capability in an exponential way. It's the same Moore's law we have seen in hardware. The same thing will happen with LLM, because LLM at the moment is function of data and hardware and compute, going electricity and all of that, right? So some of this cost at least will, as we scale up and there is more usage and it is spread amongst more usage, the same thing will happen with LLM. I'll give you an example. When I started out, a laptop was $4,000. So this is 30 years ago, right? So now it is like less than $400. It has dropped more than 90% in uninflated terms. When you account for inflation, it's probably dropped 99%.
Yes.
We are paying 1% for a laptop compared to 30 years ago. Right? I believe something similar will happen. Maybe not that dramatic, something similar. So it's not something where we need to focus on. Focus on the value. In fact, focus on the numerator. The denominator, much bigger companies are taking care of it. Microsoft, AWS, Meta, they are all taking care of building cost-effective LLMs and making it democratized across users.
Yes. So as we are speaking, there are three important functions whenever you are implementing a use case. One is the value, one is the cost, that allocation, and the third important factor is the return on investment that we always talk about, which can be a subset function of the value that you are trying to bring. So two of the main reasons why AI projects are likely to be shelved are either failure to achieve forecasted result, and the difficulty, and the other being the difficulty in assessing AI's return on investments. So how can businesses effectively measure the return on investment of their GenAI initiatives? Will a tight capital allocation help companies measure return on investment in a better way?
Return is an ambiguous term. It's not just hard, return. You can calculate a net present value of that project. I think we are not in that era now with AI and GenAI. It's a lot more qualitative, it feels, based on the conversations we are having. Let me give you an example. Let's say you take customer service in an organization, for example. Customer service in an organization which has a lot of data usually is a function of that customer service agent having like a 360-degree view of all the data to be able to serve that customer, right? Now, historically, the concept of this 360-degree view of all your data has always been there. It has been spoken about, but only very, very few companies, like pure digital companies, have been able to implement. Like if you're a more traditional company where you have a hybrid systems like digital systems and legacy systems, bringing that 360-degree view is almost unheard of, right? Because the data is too much, that every day the data is being produced, and the data is in different formats, in different systems, in different, sometimes even in different cloud providers, etc., etc. Let's say you build a customer service tool which is working with a human agent, which has a really 360-degree view of all of this data in real time and can answer any question the customer has 100% accurately. What is the value of that to that business? It's probably enormously valuable, but very difficult to quantify.
Yes.
But obviously, over time, that if you are having such a high customer satisfaction, it will flow through in your net promoter score. It will flow through into your repeat customers, your market share growth, and all of that. It will flow eventually into your ROI, but very difficult to quantify in a project scenario. This is where I think going back to the value chain is very, very important. Going back to that cookie example, a lot of these food manufacturing companies, one of their key driver of growth is new innovative products, new cookies. It could be new flavors, new sizes, new variants, but new cookies sell more cookies, right? Both the new cookies sell and the old, the previous cookies also sell more. This is a proven value driver in that kind of an industry, in food manufacturing industry. Yeah. So you need to understand what is the value driver in your industry and apply AI in that space, because firstly you're motivated to do it because you know it's a value driver, it's going to increase your sales and bottom line and all of that. Then you allocate the right resources in a lean way to reduce risk and experiment with it, and that will tilt your ROI in the right direction. Some of it will be quantitative, you can measure it and report back. Some of it will be qualitative, like that customer service example I gave you. And it over time, hopefully, both will add up.
Yes. So, bringing another point on this front, the example which you gave about customer service and having throughout your journey worked in different industries, have you observed any specific industries or use cases where a lean GenAI strategy can be challenging to implement?
I would like to say that that a lean strategy will work in any industry. I would like to say that obviously I haven't worked in all industries. I've had the good fortune of working in many industries, yes. But I'm sure there are, probably I can think of very heavily regulated industries where the risk of getting something wrong is very high. Let's say patient care in medicine, for example. Even then I could be wrong there. When the impact of getting something wrong is very high on the user, then you can't really implement the lean strategy because you can't experiment with that. Maybe a very bad example I will give you: autopilot in aeroplane systems. Right now, can we implement the same self-driving technology in flying aeroplanes? Well, the technology is exactly the same, right? It's a LiDAR, radar, and all of that, plus that image recognition processing. It's the same, right? What you have in your Tesla, you can pretty much put it on a plane and trying to make it fly. The controls are the same. But the impact of something going wrong, if the Tesla messes up a bit, you're still on the road. But if the plane messes up, then you got probably a much bigger disaster, right? So you got to think about it that way. You got to think about the risk of implementing.
That's a great way to keep the thinking hat on. Yes, the example which you gave. So coming to the last couple of questions that we had for you. So one thing which I want to highlight here is also that there are always these fear of missing out elements with some of the organizations whenever there is a new technology in the market which is evolving and a lot of people are catching on the wave. So what are the key risks which GenAI skeptics face apart from being outpaced by competition?
Yeah, it's a great question. Now, fear of missing out, FOMO, is a great motivator, right? So that gets people to take action, at least to listen to what's happening with AI and think about it. So it's a positive motivator. The risk is my kind of guess or prediction is each technology we have seen has been implemented faster than the one before. So if you see the continuum of technology, you've got the PC, then you've got the laptop, then you had the internet, then you had the smartphone, and then now we are having ubiquitous AI. So AI was already there, hidden in many of our devices, but now it is far more ubiquitous. Right? So we are kind of at the fifth wave of technology. If you see the space between each of these waves, it's increasingly shorter. So the time for PC adoption was many, many years or decades, and then laptops were faster than that, smartphones were even faster than that, and so on, right? So the risk for organizations not thinking about it or taking action is that the change that will come with AI adoption will be faster than it came with the last technology, which is the smartphone. So it will be even more faster. As such, the biggest risk to organization is not a resource risk, it's a mindset risk, I would say. Right? So if you had a kind of a rigid mindset where you were looking for a perfect plan, a perfect ROI, a perfect team to implement it, or a perfect partnership to implement it, then you are not going to make much progress. Right? Whereas a more nimble competitor, which is more comfortable with a less than perfect plan, a less than perfect ROI, a less than perfect talent base, a less than perfect partnership, is probably going to make a lot more progress.
That's a very unique observation that you have, I would say, on this front. Yeah.
Because this change is being dictated by the pace of adoption, which is beyond our control, Ketan. And that means that you cannot control those external circumstances or your competition. You need to think about training your people with the right mindset for AI. And the right mindset for AI is very, very different to the last technology which we adopted, which is the smartphone. Now, I will give you an example, and you know this better than me. The output from AI is unpredictable compared to software. Right? So with software, you do something, it does something. If you put a different input, it will give you a different output, and you can know this whether it is right or wrong, and you can cross check. With AI, you cannot do that. AI is generating something, it's making something up. So it's how do you explain it? How do you do the explainability with that? How do you predict that? Now, if you're thinking, you're sitting there saying that the AI is wrong, you're probably right, but you're not making progress.
Right.
So the mindset required with AI adoption is for organization is they need to radically retrain mindsets. They need to radically retrain their employee base to approach AI initiatives with a completely different mindset, and some foundational training need to be there. That what is AI needs to be there, right? So that I've seen a lot of recent initiatives, very good AI implementation or experimentation, and then the users are sitting there, the output is wrong, but there's no way to prove or disprove that the output is wrong. And I'm sure you encounter this as
Yes.
well, right?
Yes.
So this is again not linking into the value chain, not linking into the user, and then trying to do that project. So the foundational training mindset shift needs to be there for the AI experimentation and initiatives to succeed.
Yes, mindset is very important. I can totally relate to from where you are coming from. Thank you so much, Haja, for spending time with us and patiently answering all our queries for our audience. So, just to summarize from my end, I will talk about the key takeaways, and happy to have your view on the key takeaways if I have missed something. So, for me, I think the first key takeaway is you should talk about understanding the value chain and the user journey, but take those use cases which can help you gain momentum at the beginning, and then build upon it as an iterative strategy and do capital allocation to them. The mindset retraining that you talked about is very important, and you have to develop that AI mindset in order to what you say go about building the strategy.
Indeed, I think it's a very good summary. I think you should have done the podcast, not me, because you have done you have summarized it in without all those long-winded examples.
Yeah, and for the summarization, I did not use any LLM model for a change.
Right,
Yes.
so we didn't cheat on this one. Very
Yes.
good.
Yes. So we can clearly say that this podcast was generated by humans and not AI.
I think
Yes.
it's very interesting. We are coming to the world where we have to say that.
Exactly, exactly. So again, thank you very much, Haja, and we wish you all the best in your journey. And I'm sure that we would definitely in future have you back on our series of neural networking with Ketan podcast. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ketan, and wish you all the best for Converge as well. And it's always pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much.